Backyard Farmer is a co production of NET Television and the University of Nebraska Lincoln Extension. Tonight on Backyard Farmer, we'll build habitats for pollinators and take a look at everyone's favorite, the tomato. That's all coming up next, right here on Backyard Farmer.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and we've got another great gardening program for you tonight. Joining me on the show, we have our panel of experts from the University of Nebraska Extension. We have Tom Weisling back for our insect questions, turf and weed questions, Rock Gassois.
Pleasure to be here tonight.
Rots and spots, we've got Lauren Giesler.
Always great to be here, Kim.
And answering our landscape questions, we have Sarah Browning.
Hi, everybody.
You know, our phone volunteers are standing by to take your gardening questions. You just have to dial 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. If you have digital pictures, you can send those questions via email. That address is byf@unl.edu. We do try to answer those questions on a future show, so please do include your location when you send us an email. You can always get more gardening information also from your local extension educator, or you can visit the Backyard Farmer website. As always, we like to start with samples, and Tom, yours has been trying to escape.
Mine is trying to escape. One of the things we're trying to do is draw attention to the importance of milkweed. And this is an insect that is highly associated with milkweed. This is a red milkweed beetle. In the U.S., there's 14 different types. In Nebraska, we at least have 6. I'd like to get out and try to find more. But you can find them middle of the summer, starting to feed on the flowers, and then they go to the leaves. And when they feed on the leaves, you get this little leaf tip chewed away. And they'll spend about a month on the plant. They'll mate, then they'll go off, and the female will lay eggs down at the right at soil level, right on the crown of the roots. And the little larvae will bore into the root system. They go down through the soil, find the roots, and that's where the larvae will start to feed. Now, if it's a nice big plant with a nice big tuber in it, root, they'll bore through the whole thing. So these things are really associated, just as associated with milkweed as monarchs are.
All right, excellent, and kind of pretty.
Yeah, and it didn't fly away.
Go big, it's on your finger.
It's attacking.
All right, Rock, not so pretty.
No, this is a prostrate knotweed. I think everyone knows what it is, or some people call it spotted, knotweed, I'm sorry. Prostrate spurge. Some people call it spotted spurge, and there's an argument about whether it's the same species or not. Not really relevant because it's going to behave the same way regardless, but you can see the stripe or the spots on this one. And also in these bracts, there are seeds. So it's relatively easy to pull now. You don't want to be spraying this time of year with products that would kill this because of the increase in potential for damage to, tomatoes and vine grapes and whatever out there that's got broad leaves on it. So you really want to avoid that, and you won't have very good control anyway. It's getting ready to die. It's an annual. But if you pull it up, it'll come up relatively easy. You'll get a little sticky on your fingers because there's this milky spurge in it. But after you pull it up, don't just toss it back where it was. And if you use a hoe, you have a tendency to leave it there as well in the garden. So get that picked up because those seeds are ready to go, and they may already be pollinated and ready to disperse. So by leaving them in the lawn, or in the ornamental bed, you're just going to have the same problems later. Relatively easy to control with pre-emergence in the spring. The same products you use to control, crabgrass and others work well in the lawn, and in the home garden, something like preen would work as well. Once again, it's a spurge, and much like a lot of the other weeds right now, trying to control it is probably pretty much a waste of time besides being kind of stupid.
Okay, thanks, Rock. All right, rots and spots on a favorite old-fashioned plant.
Well, that's right. There's lots of fungal leaf spots active right now in a lot of our landscape plants. And in this particular one, where we're looking at leaf spot on, all I can say is rutabaga right now.
Peony.
Peony. I pulled this out of my yard and I just totally
lost it. That's okay, I said knotweed wrong, so we're on a roll.
Leaf spot on peony. But with peony, you see a lot of different ones. This one particularly is Cercospora, and you can see the oval leaf spots with the gray centers, which are identifiable for that. With this, even some of the other ones that we'll see, the same management would take place here, where we're looking at this being a residue-borne disease, so sanitation in the fall, cleaning up those leaves, redirecting any irrigation. So we're not looking at overhead irrigation that keeps those leaves wet longer periods of time. That's going to aggravate it. So those two main things. There are fungicides available to manage this, and if you really wanted to do that, you could use a lot of the different just landscape ornamental fungicides that would have propiconazole would be good product choices for this to do that, but you wouldn't have to do it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Sarah, yours is also not supposed to be that color, I don't believe.
Yeah, you know, if this was October, this would be great. But, you know, end of July, beginning of August, this is not so great. I've got two samples here of plants that are showing unusual reddening of the foliage here in the middle of the summer. This sample is burning bush. Everybody's probably familiar with that one. This one I have a maple, probably a Acer Freemontii cross or something like that. When we get this unusual red coloration development in the middle of the summer, it indicates that there's something going wrong with the plant. The plant is stressed for some reason, and that's why it's developing these pigments at an improper time of year. The burning bush sample happened to come from an area where it was very, very hot. It had mulch and landscape fabric around the base of it, and really was not receiving any water at all except for rain. So since we haven't had any appreciable rain in the last 3 weeks, this plant is getting very stressed. The maple was also having some watering issues in a very low maintenance area, severe trunk damage with some sun scald that's occurred over the years. And so that's contributing to this coloration. So if you see this type of thing developing in your landscape now, it's a warning flag. You need to do some investigation and figure out what's going wrong with that plant so this doesn't progress and you actually get into branch dieback or death of the plant.
All right, thank you, Sarah. All right, Tom, you get the first picture. This is, I don't think we've ever had a picture quite like this before. This is a viewer who has seen these bitty caterpillars. That's a screen. So for our viewers, for scale, that's just like a screen on a window. She wonders what they are, and she thinks maybe they were chewing through the screen or in the holes of the screen. What do we have going on here?
Those are very tiny caterpillars, probably fall armyworms. A moth was flying along at night, you had a window light on or something, and she flew up to it, bam, into the screen. And so she's kind of just sitting there going, what do I do now? And she hasn't left that area because she's probably still attracted in by the light, or maybe her leg was stuck in the screen. But for some reason, she decided that was a perfect spot to lay eggs. And that's what she did. And these are just little tiny, just hatched caterpillars, probably fall armyworm, maybe variegated cutworm. And they're leaving the screen off to look for some place to eat. They probably won't make it to a plant. That's a long ways from a plant. But they're not the ones that are chewing a hole in the screen. Most likely that's caused by grasshoppers.
All right, or a bird.
Potentially.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, Rock, we have a viewer who thinks she has pigweed all over the vegetable garden and in the bare areas of her turf. She wants us to confirm that yes, it is, and then she wants to know whether pulling and mowing it before it goes to seed will control it.
Yeah, that is one of the amaranth. I'm not sure which one because there's a half a dozen that are common in the state. That said, she's already, she answered the question correctly, and then she's also saying pull it or get rid of the seed heads, which you need to do. Spraying, like we said earlier, isn't a good idea right now, but getting those seed heads off of there. And once again, you can throw them in the compost pile. They won't survive proper compost temperature, but get that out of there. Now, mowing in the lawn is going to do, but some of the, especially prostrate pigweed, tends to spread laterally and then will actually produce seed underneath a relatively high mowing height. Like along the ditch bank, but if you're going 2.5, 3 inches, you probably should be fine. Mowing can work, but still you're better off just pulling out of the ground. If the ground's moist, they're relatively easy to pull.
All right, thank you, Rock. Lauren, this is in a person who lives in the country south of St. Paul, and they found this little thing growing in the garden path. He thinks it's a fungus of some sort, and
Great
it is
picture.
a bitty one. I don't know how you'd even see something
Yeah,
smaller than a
so
penny
small.
in the
and
garden.
actually, many times, if this is what I think it is, many times these will grow in little clusters, and I believe this is the initial developing stage of a bird nest fungus. So if that's correct, if the viewer watches this, it should develop into like a gray open, looks like a little bird nest with the little spore bodies inside that will be there like little seeds inside, and that's how the fungus spreads. Actually, a relative of it is the shotgun fungus. in the east that does a lot of damage and shoots sticky spores up onto siding.
Interesting.
And does damage that way. So interesting little picture, great. Just want to comment too on pictures. When viewers send them in, if they can do it with high resolution, that helps us a lot too, because sometimes they're small and it's hard to see. This one was great. So really encourage you to send those images in large size.
Exactly. Thank you, Lauren. And that's fun that he's that observant. to
Yeah,
see
that was
little
great.
thing.
Great.
All right, Sarah, this is an Omaha viewer. They're saying every single year their maple in the front yard grows except for the middle of the canopy. Top part is always bare like that. The rest of the tree is healthy. They want to know what they can do about it. And they had also asked us what kind it was. And they had sent another picture that was a little bit blurry, but it was kind of the purple foliage.
So this is a maple, a Norway maple. And there are several cultivars that have that more purplish colored foliage. So this is a little bit difficult to answer what exactly is happening here. I would do some real investigation of those branches that are in the center of the crown to look for things like physical damage. You know, have squirrels strip the barks off of portions of those branches. Are there actually cracks at the base of the branches? Maybe some physical damage. You might look for borers to see if those sections of the tree have been attacked. It is kind of odd to see it happen that way. It's more common to see branch dieback on the side branches rather than in the middle. So I would just look for those types of things and see if you can find anything there that might be causing this in the tree.
You know, and maybe if they are thinking about it in the winter months, they could send us a picture without foliage.
Sure.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Well, much of the world's produce depends on insects. Without pollinators, we have no flowers, no fruit, no nuts, no tomatoes. And our first feature tonight focuses on how a diverse landscape and garden can help these insects thrive and help your garden grow. Here's Tom Weisling to tell us more.
It's a really exciting day here in the garden. It's a nice warm afternoon. It's sunny, it's clear. We just followed a few really hot days. And the reason it's exciting is because I'm looking around and this place is just teeming with insects, not pest insects, some really good insects. I see a few predators. I'm seeing a lot of pollinators out. I'm seeing flies that are pollinating. I'm seeing butterflies go by. And I'm seeing an awful lot of bees. Now, in the United States, there's about 3,500 different species of bees, different types of bees. And almost all of them are native bees. The rest of them are a few imported species, like the imported European honeybee. Now, all of these collectively do an incredibly good job of pollinating our crops and plants. As a matter of fact, the overall industry is several $billion of importance from pollinators. And if you just take the native bees, just the ones that are out on their own pollinating, it's over $3 billion worth of value. And that's pretty amazing, considering that we don't have to manage these bees like we do for the European honeybees. But as we talked about before, declines of bees, native bees and honeybees, are impacting pollination. And the reason the native bees have been in decline is for a lot of reasons that the imported honeybee is in decline. And that's because of loss of habitat and sometimes pesticide use. Inadvertently, if we see an insect on a plant, we may accidentally spray it because we're not sure what it's doing. We think it's a pest. But if we know it's a bee, we shouldn't be spraying the plant. We've talked about that a little bit. And it's important to promote the levels of these things as much as we can to aid in this natural pollination, unmanaged pollination of these plants. Now, out of these 3,500 different species that we have, different types of native bees, about 2/3 of them actually nest in the ground. We've talked about the ones that nest in tubes, like in our little bee hotel back here, but there's also ones that will dig their own holes in the ground, and they do a really good job of doing the excavation. They line the tunnel, and then they fill that with the brood, just like they do back in our little bee hotel back here, except it's in the ground. So it's important, if you want to promote ground nesting bees, instead of mulching the entire area, leave some bare ground. And bees will start to excavate that and use that. So it's important to provide habitat for all these bees, always have plants flowering year round, and have places where they can do their nesting. And all of these factors together will help support the bumblebee population and improve it through time.
We spend a lot of time talking about getting rid of the insects that attack our garden plants, fruits and vegetables, but really good gardeners do understand that the beneficial insects are the ones that are vital to healthy crops. It's good to keep that in mind when we're applying pesticides or not applying pesticides.
Correct.
So glad you found all those in the Backyard Farmer Garden, which means...
Oh, there's all kinds of great beneficial insects in there. It really
And-
looks good.
And lots of holes in our vegetables and fruits. Oh well. All right, Tom, you get the next picture. This is an Omaha viewer, and this is about a 15 to 20 foot tall linden, about 15 years old. We've had several "what's eating my linden" questions this year. What is this?
This has been a rough summer for lindens, and what this particular insect is a basswood leaf miner. And so it attacks basswood, and lindens are fairly close related, so it'll also attack lindens. And this is a very tiny beetle, leaf beetle, and it lays its egg right on the leaf surface, and the little tiny larvae bore into the leaf, and that's where it'll start to feed, in between the bottom and top layer of that leaf. It's very tiny, fits right through there, and it starts off tunneling, and you just see little tiny lines in there, but as it gets bigger and fatter and eats more, it tends to make a blotch. Now these areas where they fed on start off kind of whitish looking, and then they clear up maybe a little bit, but then they turn brown, and then they start to look not so nice. But then they'll pupate in there, and out will come the little beetle, and they start to feed on the leaf, and they skeletonize the leaf. They take a little bite here and there, so it adds to the damage that you see on the leaf. And if you think about management of it, it's really kind of a cyclic event. Usually we don't have a problem. We might have a year or two where they really seem to be in high numbers. So really the recommendation is just ride it out the best that you can. But don't be real quick to blame the basswood borer, because there may be Japanese beetles on adults out there that are doing the skeletonizing as well.
All right, thank you, Tom. Rock, this is a viewer who sent us a couple images of a turf that she describes as thick and almost spongy. And she's wondering what it is and whether it's a keeper.
If this one's a little difficult. I'm not sure we have enough of a picture to see, and a sample would be a great idea. But it looks a little bit like one of the bent grasses to me, perhaps red top, maybe even bent grass that came in from a local golf course. The birds brought in the seed or whatever. And when it's mixed in a mixed bag of lawn, and I think she described having a lot of stuff in her lawn, including fescue, and it looked like in the picture there was a little bit of bluegrass. But the one she picked out specifically, I think, is one of the agrostis or bent grasses, and they don't tolerate our weather conditions very well. I mean, they do thrive when water is a little bit limiting. They tend to get more pathogens than they should. If Lauren wants to comment on that, I'm not going to let him because he really doesn't know what he's talking about. But I think it's an agrostis. A sample would be great. And unfortunately, that's not one we would recommend for a home lawn situation in the state of Nebraska.
All right, thank you, Rock.
Sorry, Lauren.
That's okay.
Lauren, I'm going to let you answer
I'll just let it
these,
go.
however. This is two different viewers with two different viburnums in two different locations. The first one is West Omaha, and they're both lantana type viburnums. This one is a variegated one, and they're saying that never a problem with it, and all of a sudden they're seeing branches with wilting leaves that turn brown. They are wondering whether it's Phytophthora or a verticillium wilt of some sort. Any ideas on that
A
one?
couple of things you could do. I would take the branches that are wilting and if you would just take a pruner and cut through those, you'd see some discoloration in the
Okay.
stem. If it is verticillium, you could scratch the bark and see that, or you could send a sample into the diagnostic lab. We can see verticillium, and there could be other disorders as well. I'd look for cankers. I would look for any kind of feeding injury, things like that, down on that stem. It may simply be something you can just prune it out and it'll go away. So I would
right.
start there and look, and if you see any zone affected, go about 3 to 4 inches below that, prune it out and see what happens.
All right, and your second one goes to you because it is a viburnum and it's doing that, but
And
it's...
it's just kind of in a tough environment,
Yeah.
though, I think, more than anything. And anytime you put plants in, and Sarah may want to comment on this, but rock mulches and things, I mean, that's a really harsh environment. So you're really stressing that plant, and it will succumb to problems more frequently in that environment than it would if you had a nice wood mulch and it was in a good area.
Right.
That kind of goes along with the sample that I had earlier with
Right.
that you can see the reddening of the undersides of the leaves, the thin canopy, the small leaves. Yeah, it's stressed, bad environment.
Exactly. White rock mulch. All right, Sarah, you get the next picture, and we have seen these around all sorts of locations. This is Lincoln. They're wondering what this is.
Yeah, this is a plant called scarlet gilia, or sometimes it's called standing cypress. It's a biennial or a perennial. There's two species of this that can be grown ornamentally. One gets to be about 2 feet tall. The other one gets quite a bit taller, 4 to 6 feet. But they will often reseed themselves in a landscape, and they're actually native in North America. One is native in the Northwest and one is native in the Southeast. So it's kind of a fun perennial, nice red flowers that hummingbirds like.
Absolutely, and I think Gladys grows that one. All right, well, this week's Green and Growing tip focuses on good mowing practices. UNL turfgrass specialist Bill Kreiser tells us that mowing height and frequency are the key things to any healthy stand of turf.
Mowing can be one of the most time-consuming parts about having a nice green lawn. And generally the recommendation is you should mow it high. We recommend about 3-inch mowing height for a bluegrass or a tall fescue lawn. And mow it whenever the grass gets to about 1/3 of the clippings to be removed when you mow. So if you had it at 3 inches, when at the 4.5 inches, you'd mow it back down to 3 inches. This study here I've made looking at different mowing heights and mowing frequencies to see what height actually makes the most amount of growth. And so what we're finding is the higher we mow, the slower that the grass actually grows, and the more frequently we mow it too, the slower the grass grows. When we let the grass grow up really, really high, we get a lot of growth. What we recommend is to mow to the 1/3 rule or even less. So say if you're mowing at 3 inches, it gets to 4 inches mow. And avoid mowing really high, because when we mow high, we scalp and we actually grow more grass. It means we have to clean our mowers out a lot more.
So keeping your mower blade sharp and not letting that grass grow too long are really the best ways to keep that lawn green all summer long. And those are good tips that you guys say that pretty much all the time, Rock. Don't start filling around.
But
with
Bill
it
did a
too
nice
short.
job showing pictures of it, and Bill's a nice addition to the turf team.
Yes, he is, and a young'un at that. All right, you get the next question, Tom. This is a viewer who she took a picture of a hummingbird moth on her petunia, knew the hummingbird moth, but she also said there are worms attacking the flowers of the petunias. And she didn't send a picture of the worm, but we had a little discussion about what it probably is.
Probably not hornworm.
Right.
So tomato budworm is the most likely culprit. And tomato budworm is also known as, and I don't know why it's got so many common names, but corn earworm. It's the same thing that you find in your little sweet corn tip. So really, hand picking is probably the best option at this point, to go out there daily and pull off all the worms you can find. If you do have a big bed that you want to spray, I would suggest a BT product.
All right, and those are the ones that turn color, so they're
Yes,
hard to
yes.
find. Whatever they eat, they become. All right, oh, this one falls to you because you answered this one about 2 months ago. And this is a viewer who wants to know, what is the name of the lotion that you use to prevent poison ivy?
There's several on the market. One of them is called IVX, and I hope it's not too late, and they're actually thinking about venturing out. And then there's a pre-treatment for poison ivy, and unfortunately I can't remember the name, so I'm not going to be able to answer it. But if you type in poison ivy preventative, you can Google it. This product will come up. It's mail order, or sometimes you'll see it at like CVS or Walgreens. And everyone I know that has used it says, I'm not hypersensitive to poison ivy, so I've never had a problem. But people I know that have used it, and they said that's amazing. And they're like hand wipes, and you put them all over your skin that's exposed. And when you brush up against the poison ivy, the oils you don't get the negative reaction. So sorry, I can't remember. IVX is one of the names, and there's a number of other ones that'll fall into that thing. But just Google that, you'll be able to pick it up. Sorry, I don't remember.
It'd probably be nice to watch the video of him answering it 2 months ago and see if it was the same.
See whether or not he made something up.
I thought when we were off air,
see how that
you
works.
you were not going to take offense to what I did you earlier. But that's fine. Go ahead.
No.
Ask him a question. Make him be quiet.
All right, I will. Lauren, this is a viewer with a 10-year-old smoke tree. They say the leaves are beginning to turn brown and they're beginning to die on some of the stems of the smoke tree. And we have about 3 or 4 questions on this week.
Now, smoke tree can also get verticillium we
Yes.
talked about earlier, and,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing that could be what's going on. Again, a way to tell is to take just a pruner, cut that stem off where it's wilting and dying, see what it's looking like. If you see discoloration of vascular tissue, that plant is probably on its way out. So just take a look at that. If you have problems identifying that, I would send something into the diagnostic lab. If it is verticillium, I mean, your management's going to be more severe than other things because you're going to have it there in the soil. I wouldn't really recommend putting another smoke tree back in that or using anything that's susceptible to that.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Sarah, this is a Carney viewer, has both black diamond and crimson sweet watermelons right next to each other. Wondered if maybe they've cross-pollinated because apparently the melons don't look like either one and they're a little bit elongated.
No. The cross-pollination effect would not appear unless you saved seed from those plants this year and then grew them out again the next year. It doesn't show up in the development of the current season's fruit. So something else is going on. Maybe I don't know if they bought seed, maybe it was mismarked or something else happening. But it's not a cross-pollination issue.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, we've got pumpkins, even though it's not pumpkin season out at our garden. They seem to be way ahead of our tomatoes, which for the most part are still green. Before we go to break, let's take a minute to see what's happening out at the Backyard Farmer garden. This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we are having the advantage of some cool nights and adding a little bit of water to our plant material. Our interesting Vinca jams and jellies is starting to show why it got its name in the raised beds. We're also seeing beautiful performance by the 20 peach snapdragons, which typically like a little bit of cool. So that is fun to watch. They have survived the 100-degree heat and they are still flowering. We are seeing yet more flowering in our cone flowers that will hopefully last for the rest of the summer, especially if we do a little bit of deadheading. We're a little bit concerned about our pumpkins. They are turning bright orange already. Might be an awful long time between now and Halloween, so we may have to pick those a little bit earlier than we had planned on. Our tomatoes are doing what tomatoes across the state are doing, and that is they are just sitting there. We need a little bit of heat for those nice bright green orbs to start turning into breaker and then go into red. So that is what is happening in the Backyard Farmer Garden this week. It's time for a short break. Coming up, we'll have the Plant of the Week and the Lightning Round. Stay tuned for more Backyard Farmer right after this. Thanks for staying with us on Backyard Farmer. Later on in the show, Terry James will give us some basic information about tomatoes, and we'll see Gladys's Plant of the Week. You can still phone in your questions by dialing 1-800-676-5446. While you're doing that, we'll start the lightning round. You ready, Sarah?
I'm ready.
This viewer wants to know whether they can move a climbing hydrangea in the fall.
It'd be better to do it in the spring. They're a little bit touchy with winter conditions.
All right, and the same plant, they're wondering, can they move it from full shade to almost full sun?
No, it really would prefer at least partial shade, preferably afternoon shade.
All right, we have an Ashland viewer who says the stems on their Monarda or their bee balm are turning brown. Any ideas on that one?
No, sorry, stumped on that one.
Okay, this particular viewer has flowers but no fruit on their summer squash.
You know, a lack of fruit set is a common problem in the vegetable garden, especially in the middle of the summer when temperatures are very high. It's usually due to a lack of pollination.
All right, a Donovan viewer has an eggplant that's yellow instead of purple. Is that not eggplant?
I'm wondering virus, if that might be virus related.
Oh, interesting. When and how do you dig horseradish?
You dig horseradish in the fall after we've had a couple of frosts, so like later October. You dig it up and you save the small little roots that you want to plant again in the spring to restart your horseradish. You need to store those in the refrigerator over the winter and then take the bigger roots and go ahead and grind them up to make the horseradish.
Excellent. We'll be doing that on Backyard Farmer in September. A little early, but we'll do it. All right, nice job. Lauren, you ready?
I'm ready like lunch meat.
Okay, got to have the lunch meat. All right, this is a viewer that has black-eyed Susans or Rudbeckia. The leaves are mottled, wine-colored, and spotted.
Probably there's a septoria leaf spots, a fungal disease. There's also a virus of Rudbeckia, usually common in the cooler temperatures. Really wouldn't recommend any management. If it is the virus, rogue it out.
All right, is it okay to plant gooseberries with white pine in eastern Nebraska, or do we have white pine blister rust here?
Wow. I don't believe there's a problem with that here. I think that's more further west, so I'm not too worried about that.
Good. What sort of disease would be showing up right now to put spots on apples?
Right now, actually, we're seeing a lot of rust, pustules coming out on. So cedar apple rust is coming out pretty full bloom right now. It's a little bit later. It's been there, but you would see spots on there.
All right, and the treatment window for that is?
About a month ago.
Okay. So we have a viewer who has some brown branches in their ornamental pear. We've had this a lot this year.
Fire blight.
Yes, and what should they do
Prune that
about
out
it?
7 to 10 inches below the affected area.
Excellent. Are
Rogue it out.
sooty molds harmful?
No, they're not at all. They have no effect on the taste or quality of the apple. You can wash them off if you'd like. You can use fungicide sprays to eliminate them, but they really don't have any effect on the quality.
Excellent. Nice job, Rots and Spots. You ready, Rock?
Like spaghetti sauce.
That one doesn't work.
I don't think lunch meat does any either, but that's
You
fine.
can open a pack of lunch meat anytime and it is ready to eat.
Okay, gotcha. I now understand.
And now we get it. All right.
Let's move on.
So when should a viewer power rake their lawn if they think they have too much thatch?
Make sure that you do have too much thatch, more than a half an inch needs to be taken care of. You can usually do that with core aerification, but if you want to power rake, it should be in the spring or the fall when you have at least 30 days of good growing weather after you do it, because you're going to tear the heck out of it.
All right. Is it okay to aerate now for fall if the lawn is brown?
No.
Okay. This person has huge cracks in their soil. Do they still need to aerate?
Yes, that soil's cracking because it's a heavy clay, and yes, you still need to aerate,
All right.
but not now, in the fall.
All right. Is there anything that can be done for nutsedge now? People are seeing it.
You can hand pull it, you're still going to push them and maybe get some more in there, but really if they're unsightly, pull them out.
All right. What kills pond weeds without harming the fish?
There's a number of herbicides that are not harmful to fish. Check every label, and most of your garden stores have something that's not harmful to fish. Some of them are organic based.
All right. Is it time to control violets since it's almost fall, and with what?
No, it's going to get hot again. Everyone thinks we're done with the heat. We're going to get hot again, and let's avoid any applications until around Labor Day.
Excellent. Nice job. Ready, Tom?
Bring it on.
Second one of the
Let's go.
season. This viewer wants to know how to get rid of Mexican bean beetles.
Mexican bean beetles, I would just hand pick them off. That's probably about the best method.
All right. We have a Walnut, Iowa viewer who wants to know whether soapy water will get rid of aphids on their roses.
Oh, absolutely. Soapy water is great. I mean, it works on spider mites, aphids, all kinds of different things. I recommend it all the time. Don't use soapy water because soap can actually be a little bit toxic to the plant. So go get like a insecticidal soap that's already formulated.
Excellent. We have a Scribner viewer who says something is chomping on his Dunstan chestnut trees.
I would like to pass on that one.
Okay. What is attacking the asters right now?
Oh, I think there's about 5 different things that could be attacking the asters right now. What isn't attacking the asters? But spider mites is the likely culprit. There could also be scale insects and also thrips even could be chewing on them.
All right. Should an ash tree be pre-treated for emerald ash borer?
No, not unless you got time and a lot of money.
All right. There weren't any June bugs. Where are the grubs?
They're there. They're just in lower numbers.
Okay. Nice job, all. Plant of the week is next, Sarah, and Gladys has matched vase to one of the flowers.
Definitely. A nice purple and orange arrangement here. So the little flowers we have here in the front, the purple spikes, this is butterfly bush. Very common, kind of a woody bush that will grow in the garden. They come in a lot of different sizes. You can get dwarf types, you can get taller types. Generally, they're in the range of, say, 3 to 5 feet in height. Usually the colors of the flowers are going to be whites and purples and light purples, dark purples, some pinks. They bloom on new wood, so once the flowers fade, you can trim those off and you can get some additional, encourage more additional blooming later in the season. you have to watch their winter hardiness because they'll die down all the way to the ground in some years, but in other years, maybe they only die down to about 18 inches or so. So I like to prune mine back in the spring because then I can really see where it's growing from and what's still alive, so I don't cut it down too far. But it's a great plant for butterflies. Gladys says she can see, 8 to 10 different species of butterflies sometimes on her flowers when they come, to get the nectar from these flowers. The other plant that she brought for us here is a tiger lily. And this is not the one that's native to the U.S. This is one from China, but it's very, very common. You see them growing wild all over the place. They're kind of an old-fashioned flower. In fact, Gladys says that there's a little black bulb that develops on the stems where the leaves come out from the stems. She said it's kind of one of those things that the pioneers took with them. They took those little bulbs and as they crossed the prairies so they could have something to start their new gardens with when they reestablished. So very, very easy to grow. If you're a beginning gardener, this would be a great plant to start with because they're very easy to grow.
Excellent combination, and we thank Gladys as always. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Tom, we have a Superior viewer who just wants to know what this is.
Those are green June bugs.
Speaking of June bugs.
Yeah.
Would you like more information?
Sure.
Green June bugs actually are the larvae of these things. Think white grubs, right? June beetles, you're talking about them. It's sort of like that. The larvae look a lot like that. The adults are similar looking, similar biology. But where June beetles, June bugs are night flying, these things actually fly during the day. So
Cool.
they become a lot more visible, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is the larvae are big. They can be a couple inches long. They can leave tunnels in the ground about as big as your thumb, and they bore down in the ground. They'll come out at night, and they'll actually feed on, and you'll like this rock, thatch, so they can get rid of your thatch. So they're not always a pest. Now, the adults might feed on some fruits, but that's about it. So it's been a southern insect. We have not recently, but it's starting to be found more commonly in Nebraska now.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Tom. Rock, this is a viewer from La Vista. They're wondering about this weed. They were worried that it was poison ivy, but then they were thrown off by the burrs, the little stickum-tights, and he says he found this in the landscape by his bird feeder.
Yeah, Kim, that's there's a group of weeds called stick tights, and basically it's because they create a seed that sticks to your wool clothing or to your pants or your jeans or whatever the case may be. And this is one of the stick tights. We debated which species it might be. I think it's one of the asters. I'm not going to go to species, but it's not poison ivy. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's an annual. Annuals tend to produce a copious amount of seed, so you need to get them pulled up or hacked out. And it's not like it's going to stick you like buffalo burr. It's not really all that tenacious in terms of sticking you and causing any harm. So pull them up, get them out of there before then. Make sure you get rid of them away from where the dogs or the cat or you might be milling about, and you should be fine. But the good news is that it's not poison ivy.
Excellent. I have lost some socks to that particular beastie because they get stuck in there and you cannot pull them out of your socks.
You must have been kicking your foot really high.
I was. All right, Lauren, this is also an Omaha viewer. They have a sunset maple, red sunset maple. That's not red.
Good.
And they're saying the leaves on the upper branches are turning this blackish color, curling, dropping. They did plant the tree 5 years ago. It's about 25 feet tall. They're also wondering, is this something you have seen or have heard of as being sort of epidemic in the eastern part of the state?
I honestly have not seen that type of symptom, but the way some of those leaves are discarded, I really wonder if it's not some sort of small insect that's resulting in those leaves cupping and twisting like that. I don't know if there's
Areophyid
anything.
mite, maybe?
Might,
Yeah,
maybe, but
areophyte
purpling,
might.
that weird purpling.
That's the thing. There's a tar spot of maple that
Okay.
we'll see, but it doesn't produce that whole black leaf area. So
sample.
I'm not sure. I mean, if it might be something to send a sample in, get it that
Excellent.
way.
Excellent.
But not really sure from the picture what it is.
It'd be nice to see maybe the whole tree. if they
Yeah,
could
picture
send
the
us a
tree
picture of the whole
even,
tree.
but probably even a sample to see if there's small insects in the leaves.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Sarah, this is a viewer, not sure where this one is from, but she has liatris, or had, and she does say this is the second one she's tried to grow in this location. Her question is whether she's watering too much.
Well, that could very well be. I mean, if the bulb is rotting, then it would certainly look like this. The plant would turn brown and wither up like that. So, you know, plus underneath the rock, and there's almost always landscape fabric underneath the rock mulch, which does tend to hold the moisture in the soil and doesn't let the air, the soil breathe as much, not as good oxygen exchange. So wet feet and wet soil could definitely cause a bulb rot. So that plant is dead. I would pull it out, take a close look at the corm and see, is it soft and mushy? Does it smell bad? That would definitely indicate you've got a rot there.
All right. The other thing is voles like corms, so who knows? Former liatris. You know, it's hard to imagine any backyard garden without at least a few tomato plants. These popular fruits come in a wide variety of varieties. Which one is right for you? Here's UNL Extension Horticulture Assistant Terry James to help us decide.
The most popular vegetable in the home garden is the tomato. Tomato is a member of the Solanaceae family, along with potatoes, peppers, and eggplant. There's two different kinds of tomato plant. There's a determinate and an indeterminate. Indeterminate plants can grow up to 10 feet or more. They need to be staked, and they bloom throughout the whole season and continuously produce fruit. Determinate plants have a determinate height, usually about 4 feet, don't need to be staked, and usually have kind of one big fruit production time all at once. The tomato plant has lots of different fruit variations. There's the cherry or grape tomato that are great in salads fresh. There's the Roma tomatoes, which are your paste tomatoes, which you can either eat fresh or are really good cooked in spaghetti sauce and paste. Then there's just the regular tomato, which range from a 1 ounce fruit to a 5 ounce fruit, which are great both for canning and fresh cooking. The Backyard Farmer Garden tomatoes all started in the greenhouse by seed this year. We then planted them out in the soil when the soil warmed up about the 20th of May or so. And however, you can, if you don't want to start your plants by seed, you can go out to the nursery and purchase them in the spring. Tomatoes are made up about 95% of water. Therefore, you need to actually put a lot of water into that plant to actually get really good tomato fruit. The best way to do it is low on the ground, no overhead watering, so soaker hose if you possibly can. Make sure that your roots are covered with mulch to help keep them cool and to help keep constant moisture on your plant. One of the main problems with tomatoes that most home gardeners see are either cracking or blossom end rot. Both of those are usually caused by infrequent watering or watering too much, letting the plant dry out, and then watering again. Another problem people see on tomatoes are insects. Here in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we usually let the insects crawl about the tomato until they start taking more of the fruit than we want to give them, and then we start treating them with as low of insecticide as possible. In the Backyard Farmer Garden, we have 3 different varieties of tomato. We have a paste tomato, we have the cherry tomatoes, and we have some heirloom tomatoes. So if you want to see a great stand of tomatoes, stop on out to the Backyard Farmer Garden anytime.
From the big slicing tomatoes to the cherries, as well as those delicious heirlooms, they're really sure to be something that will be satisfying to you if you like tomatoes. And I'm surprised by the number of people who don't. That means I get theirs. All right, Tom, you get the next picture. This viewer took a picture of this particular moth. This is from Concord, Nebraska. They're afraid it's a wasp moth, and they have apples, grapes, etc., and they've kind of read that they are not the best thing in the world for orchards.
I want to start off by saying I like tomatoes.
I can't have yours then, right?
No. This is an 8-spotted forester. It's actually a noctuid moth. And 8-spotted foresters are really, can be mistaken for a wasp moth because they are day active, and some of the wasp moths are day active. And I think really at this point I should address wasp moths. They're somewhat brightly colored, do mimic a moth, day active, and they are often found, the reason these got concerned is because they're found as pests on trees. The larvae will bore into the trees. But this one isn't like that. This one is a little bit more, the larvae are brightly colored, they have orange heads, they have all kinds of stripes on them, and they would feed on grape leaves, and they're rarely a pest on grape leaves, and they might feed on Virginia creeper or peppervine. So I would go look at those plants if you have them on the property, see if you see some caterpillars, and if you do, pull them off, or try Bacillus thuringiensis.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Tom. Rock, this one is also a weed. She classifies this as a weed. And then she wonders if it's a plant. And they called it wild oats on the farm.
That's not. I'm pretty confident that's not a grass, and
Right.
wild oats would be a grass. This looks to me like a carex or one of the annual sedges. It's a little deceptive in the picture. It looks taller than I think it actually is, and they propagate by seed relatively readily. They're everyone seems to think that sedges have to have wet soils. That's not the case. They'll grow pretty much anywhere there's a little niche for them to stick in there. So that's probably a carex. They're free to pull it. I actually find them real intriguing, and they don't really propagate all that aggressively. The seed head is very unique, and they don't produce a lot of seed. So if you really like the look, it's Fred's Nature's Wondrous Pageantry
In the sedge world.
in the sedge world.
All right, thank you, Rock. Lauren, this is, we've had lots of questions about hydrangeas with spots. This particular one looks like probably Endless Summer, one of those, and you can clearly see the spots on the foliage. They're wondering what is the disease and what can be done about it.
Hydrangeas get a couple different leaf spots, and I'm really not certain on this. They have a bacterial leaf spot and a fungal leaf spot. If I had to guess, based on that picture, I would guess fungal. I would avoid overhead irrigation. I don't think I would really go into a fungicide application at this point, and just try to remove affected leaves. Use just sanitation and avoid overhead irrigation. I think that's going to be your best thing at this point. If you see it continue and you're really concerned about it, I'd take some leaves to a diagnostic lab and make sure it's a fungal and not bacterial, so you'd use the right product.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Sarah, this sounds like it's for Tom, but it's kind of not.
Okay.
We have a viewer from Blue Hill in Webster County who wonders what's chewing on the hostas. But the close-up pictures that accompany this also showed it's really more those brown edges in that rock environment. So
Right, it's really not chewing. It's scorching of the edges of these leaves, which is pretty common in hosta as we go into the hotter part of the summer, especially if they're in too much sun, or if they're in something like a rock mulch, like in this picture, where the rock is going to really retain that heat and then radiate it back onto the plants. So it's really more of an environmental thing that you're dealing with here. If these plants could be moved into some place where they were more shaded, you probably would see this stopping. Or if they are in the shade, but it's the rock mulch that's really the issue, then you might want to make sure that they're staying well watered, especially when we get into these really hot temperatures.
all right, thank you, Sarah. Well, we have a handful of announcements of cool things in the gardening world. The first one of those being the Lincoln Iris Society Rhizome Sale, August 2nd. We have a number and all sorts of good things on the screen for our viewers on that one, so it's iris time. Then we also have an open house here at NET on August 16th, 9 to noon. Behind the scenes tours and more, including some of the backyard farmers on that one, so that should be fun for all. And then we will be at the State Fair, August 27th at 1:30 in the Nebraska building, the brand new building, and we are going to just do our good old Q&A. So we're going to hope a lot of people show up, and we're hoping we have not eaten everything fried on a stick before we answer questions because we might be comatose. All right, Tom, this is an Omaha viewer who is asking about velvet ants. And we actually had somebody send in a picture wondering what that was. It wasn't really clear, but they're saying they're in between the houses in West Omaha. They wonder why they show up. Do they eat, sting, bite, and what to do about them?
Yes, all of the above. Okay. They are actually beneficial insects. They are actually wasps. They're not ants. And if it's got wings, it's going to be a male. If it doesn't have wings, it's going to be a female. And they are actually predatory. They're parasites. They find prey, they bury it, they lay their eggs in it, larvae feed on it. So they just do their thing. If you leave them alone, they're not going to bother you.
All right, excellent. Rock, this is a little less turfy than prairie, but it's a Gretna viewer that has musk thistle in an upland prairie hay field, 15 acres of it. How do you control it?
You know, they're going to not want this answer, but it really is easily controlled with a machete and a walk through the prairie. And if they're talking 50 acres, that's a little bit different. There are herbicides, but you got to be careful what's labeled. Plus, you probably have some forbs in that prairie as well. So that said, you're probably better off hand weeding if you can get them before they rosette or before they put out a seed head, and just stay on top of them. And you take them down deep in the taproot, they're not going to repropagate from that.
All right, thank you, Rock. Lauren, we mentioned a yellow eggplant. This is, we don't know where this viewer is from, but they're saying their eggplant is curling its foliage. And
Excellent. I love to hear curling, curved foliage. Maybe it's rough and yellow, blotchy. Is that right?
Well, they're saying, is it a virus or is it bacterial? And they say dusting helped it, but then the plants are stunted, and it seems to be moving down the row.
This is a great time to rogue it out. Because this is most likely a virus, unfortunately, and that's what would happen. Anytime you have stunting, anytime you have curling leaves, these types of things, that's where you're going to be dealing with a virus, and you can't really do anything about it. If you have other plants that are the same species, you're going to have that spread, so I would rogue it out.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Sarah, a Sterling viewer wants to know whether sweet potatoes are ready to dig when they are flowering. Is that when you dig sweet potatoes?
I'm not sure. I think really it's just a little too early to dig sweet potatoes yet. I think you would wait more toward beginning of September. So it'll be after they're flowering. I mean, they'll be flowering at that time. So I think you need to wait a little bit longer.
I usually wait until I see them at farmer's market.
At the farmer's market. Yeah.
Okay, I love this question, Tom. Do insects ever sleep?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. That's a little open-ended. Insects can be day active. Insects could be active at night. We talk about it all the time, sometimes in between dawn and dusk. But they do have a period where they rest. Whether or not they catch some Z's at that time, I don't know. I've never seen them in pajamas, but...
Do they snore?
Maybe.
Sounds to me like
I don't stay up and listen to them at all, but yeah, we'll get a student
funding
on
for
that.
that.
NSF, here we come.
All right, thanks.
Sorry.
This is a North Platte viewer, Rock. They say that they actually had some work done on their lawn in mid-July, and apparently a pre-emerge and a post-emerge were put down in the middle of July. Is that recommended practice? What do you think on that without knowing the ingredients?
On a new piece of ground, and I said I don't know all the details, but anytime temperatures are elevated, we don't recommend broadleaf herbicides. Now, crabgrass, late season crabgrass control, things like Drive or Clinkorak, those are fine. Pre-emergent herbicide can be pretty much put on anytime, but if you put them on after the weed germinates, then you're just, having a little exercise and throwing something out in the environment you don't really need. So pre is very timing specific. You can hit weeds right now in the yard, but why would you hit the broadleaf weeds? Because you just run into all kinds of other problems with them, and there's really no reason to do that. So I'm not sure if that was their question. I was a little confused on exactly what the question was. Should we be doing it now?
Right.
If it's broadleaf weed control, definitely not. If it's pre-emergent, maybe, but I'm not sure what you're going to control. And if it's late season crabgrass control, then a Drive-containing product, Clinkorak, is fine.
All right, that's good. Lauren, we have a viewer who says every year their turf starts out great, then kind of starts getting brown patches in mid-July.
Well, and actually the description could be the answer. It's just hard to tell from that question.
Right.
This time in mid-July, we see brown patch if it's a fescue lawn. That's a foliar disease. We'll also see summer patch showing up when we get into the heat. So if it's in full sun areas and they're seeing patches and they have more bluegrass in their lawn, if they know, we're maybe looking at summer patch. If it's in a fescue lawn and it's occurring anytime we have night temperatures over about 75 and high humidity, then we know we're most likely dealing with brown patch. So I'd really recommend they take a close look and look at the leaves. If they see lesions on leaves and it's fescue, they can look online and see that for brown patch, or go down the road with summer patch possibly. Just
Lauren-
a couple ideas.
Lauren, so I saw Ascochyta leaf blight in bluegrass in the yards in our neighborhood when I was walking. And my question is that has the diagnostic clinic seen any Ascochyta this year? Because it seemed out of place for the kind of weather we've been having.
Well, the dryness though, the hot dry would be okay for Ascochyta.
Okay.
So if it's dry and they're not irrigating, you'd see that.
All right, so all those great turf diseases just in time to start thinking about seeding for the fall. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have for Backyard Farmer tonight. We want to say thanks to our panel for another great show. Thank you, Tom, for showing up again, and to everybody who submitted questions and pictures. Helping us on the phones tonight, we had Master Gardeners Gladys Juring, George Edgar, George Maley, Kit Diamond, and Carol Rusted. From Finke Gardens was Cole Weston. Next time on Backyard Farmer, we'll be focusing on powdery mildew on lilacs. Extension plant pathologist Lauren Giesler will show us some examples of this fungus on lilac leaves and tell us how we can avoid it. Thanks for watching. Good night, good gardening, and we'll see you all next week right here on Backyard Farmer.